ArieForce One just opened up at FunSpot Atlanta, and it's brought up a big question for this small chain. What's next? FunSpot seems to have huge plans for their parks, especially the Atlanta one, and I think that if all goes well, FunSpot could become one of the most successful and well-known theme park chains in the country. First off, let's go over the present-day FunSpot. Operating 3 parks in Atlanta, Georgia, Kissimmee, Florida, and Orlando, Florida, the FunSpot parks have gained reputations for being small, quarter-day parks that pair nicely with a visit to the larger, full or even multi-day parks that are located nearby. And while in the future I could see that staying the same for the Florida parks, I think the Atlanta park is the one that will be making headlines. In fact, it already kinda is. ArieForce One is a big deal for the park, and it marks the beginning of a new age. For the first time in its history, it is no longer considered an FEC, or Family Entertainment Center, which I think is funny because it was just awarded the Golden Ticket Award for Best FEC. With the addition of ArieForce One, FunSpot Atlanta can now join her sisters as an amusement park, and it's not stopping there. FunSpot has shown that they aren't just leaving the park the way it is. There's nearly 100 acres of undeveloped land, and they plan to use it. They've shared that they want to build more roller coasters, a water park, and maybe even an on-site hotel. They don't want to make this an amusement park. They want to make this place a destination. And ArieForce One is the beginning of it all. They've said that they want this park to become the next Holiday World. And how I know that is because I was talking to one of the higher-ups at FunSpot Atlanta, who was also there at Holiday World, who helped grow it to what it is today. But I think they can make this place much bigger than Holiday World. Holiday World is pulling crowds from a town of just 2,500 people. The closest city to Holiday World is Owensboro, Kentucky, which is half an hour away and only has 60,000 residents. The closest city with over 1 million people is Louisville, Kentucky, which is an hour and a half away. Atlanta alone has over 6 million people. That means that there's 6 million people within an hour drive to FunSpot. Meanwhile, over in Indiana, there's probably like 500,000 people that are within an hour drive of Holiday World. So yeah, there's a big difference. The point is, Holiday World is in the middle of nowhere, and FunSpot Atlanta could get much higher attendance than Holiday World could if they played their cards right, and therefore would also become a much larger park. I really do see FunSpot being bigger than Holiday World. In fact, I can see it as almost like a mini Cedar Point. FunSpot clearly shows that they will go big or go home, the same motto that Cedar Point had in the late 1900s, and now it's a household name for roller coasters. And while FunSpot may never be able to get the amount of land that Cedar Point has, I don't really think that'll be much of an issue because FunSpot really seems to be smart with the land that they have. Not only are they experienced with ultra compact parks because the Florida parks are both under 15 acres and have a lot of stuff to do, but if you look at ArieForce One, nearly 2/3 of the ride is on land that was already developed, and the land that was developed for the ride is compact and really wouldn't hinder adding something new. For the size of ride that it is, I'd say ArieForce One actually has a pretty small footprint. If FunSpot didn't have plans to add more stuff and make this a very large park, then why would they remove a loved attraction, the mini golf courses, and then build the ride where it doesn't use up any more land than it needs to? ArieForce One is basically on top of the existing park, and I'm sure that they would not have done that if they were just going to leave the undeveloped land undeveloped. I guarantee you that FunSpot would not have gone through the trouble of getting the permits for this ride to go over the pathways in the building unless they needed to save as much land as they possibly could for future expansion. FunSpot has made it pretty obvious that they want to make this park massive, and they've even admitted it to some degree. Now there is one problem: money. More specifically, the money that was spent on ArieForce One. ArieForce One was a big gamble, being the most expensive coaster that FunSpot has ever built at nearly $18 million, and then that project going to by far their smallest and least profitable park. It is a pretty risky move. I'd imagine that the plan was to use ArieForce One to bring media attention to FunSpot, which it did, which would then let everyone in Atlanta know that this park even existed, which kinda worked, and then those people would come to the park and have such an amazing time on their massive world-class roller coaster that they'd tell their friends and come back, which I do not think worked. And the problem is, ArieForce One is too intense. If the enthusiasts are complaining about a ride being too intense and therefore uncomfortable, then we have a problem. Many people are going to FunSpot and riding the shiny new big roller coaster and then getting off and not getting back in line. Why? Because they didn't like it. They found, probably the ending uncomfortable and therefore do not want to ride it again, which is a big problem. If people don't like the big new roller coaster that is the main draw to FunSpot, then they're going to just go ride all of the small little rides that are everywhere else and then never come back. That wasn't the point. The whole point of ArieForce One was to bring people back, and I don't really think that's doing too well on the general public side of things. Now, there are enthusiasts that are going there every day, so that is bringing a little bit of money, but you want the general public to come, not the enthusiasts, because they're the ones that bring all of their family and their friends and therefore spend much more money. Now, as someone who thinks that ArieForce One is the closest coaster to perfection in existence, well, probably, I couldn't fathom riding ArieForce One and not liking it, but most of the general public do not have the same tolerances to roller coasters as enthusiasts have, because 1, they only care about height and speed, and 2, many enthusiasts have gotten used to the forces that roller coasters exert on them and therefore have a stronger tolerance towards G-forces. They should actually run an experiment to see if us enthusiasts could handle more G-forces, because even if it's a little more, I'm sure we could. Now, I've still seen many FunSpot guests that aren't enthusiasts that will go around and ride the ride multiple times, but that number isn't as high as it probably should. However, on the enthusiast side of things, this ride is very, very, very successful. On any given day, ArieForce One station is probably more enthusiasts than GP. Now, I don't know if that's a bad thing because, well, there should be way more GP than enthusiasts at any given time, but it is at least good that there are a bunch of enthusiasts coming every single day. There are people coming from out of state all the time. I think every single time I've at least talked to 2 or 3 different people who are not from Georgia, and they came just to ride ArieForce One. So that is a success in my eyes for the enthusiasts. So overall, I do think ArieForce One is a success, just not as much as I think everyone hoped for. I think it'll take another big coaster, not on the scale of ArieForce One, but I could see something similar to maybe White Lightning at FunSpot Orlando, just maybe a little bigger, around maybe 100 feet. Having a great Woody that everyone can ride, and then that ultra intense ride that the more hardcore riders can love, is something that I think would get people to come back. So while ArieForce One did succeed in putting the park on the map, I think FunSpot Atlanta needs one more coaster that can appeal to more people, since ArieForce One is too much for most. And luckily, that could very well be in the planning stages already right now. I've heard some rumors that FunSpot has already bought a GCI Woody for Atlanta. Apparently, they liked both of the pitches from RMC and GCI so much that they went ahead and just bought both. Now, is this true? Very likely not. But with FunSpot, you may never know. If I would have told you 2 years ago that FunSpot Atlanta was getting a massive RMC iBox coaster, you would have said, there's a FunSpot in Atlanta, and then proceed to say, no way. So even if they haven't bought a GCI Woody already, I do think that is the next coaster that FunSpot Atlanta will be getting. Now, enough about the Atlanta park. What could the Florida parks look like when the Atlanta park becomes big and successful? And the answer is, well, probably not very different. There are a couple reasons. Reason 1 is because they don't really have any room to expand, and reason 2 is because no matter how big FunSpot gets, they will never be able to compete with Disney, Universal, or SeaWorld. SeaWorld alone can hardly keep up, and I don't ever see FunSpot getting the size of SeaWorld Entertainment. And even if they ever did become that size, that money would have come from the Atlanta park, so they just reinvest it into the Atlanta park. The Florida parks already have their purpose, to be smaller parks that you can go to for a few hours and ride some fun rides without a bunch of crowds, and they're doing that very well. Obviously, there are improvements they can make to make the parks nicer, but for the most part, I don't really see them changing that much. They're already kind of perfect for what they're supposed to be doing. So in conclusion, do I think FunSpot will become this multi-billion-dollar business that operates a bunch of parks and is the largest theme park chain? No, of course not. I think FunSpot is just trying to make a name for themselves, and they're doing that with the Atlanta park. FunSpot wants to be one of the places that is a must-do if you're in Orlando or Atlanta, because right now, if I walked up to a random tourist in Atlanta or Orlando, they probably would not know what FunSpot is. FunSpot doesn't want to be the biggest. They just want to go from the place that everyone forgets about to the place that comes to mind when you think about roller coasters, the same way that Six Flags, Disney, Universal, and Cedar Point do. What do you think that FunSpot will look like 10 years from now? You can write that down below. And please make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. And for any of you who are wondering why I didn't mention Six Flags Over Georgia at all, it's because I think most people would agree FunSpot is better than Six Flags Over Georgia, or at least most Georgia enthusiasts do. I know I do, and a lot of people I talk to do say they like FunSpot Atlanta better than Six Flags just because it's much better run, and especially if they add more roller coasters, then it will easily become the best park. Right now, Six Flags is run so horribly, so I don't think, unless they fix that, I don't really think FunSpot has much of a threat. So with that said, make sure to have a thrilling rest of your day, and I'll see you next time.